It was just an ordinary Friday in Tucson, Arizona, and my parents had left for an educational seminar in Colorado, leaving the house under my care. I was 18, and my younger sister, Ava, was only 14. I was already used to looking after her from time to time, and since our school was in the middle of exam week, we figured the weekend would be calm. And honestly, the first night really was. We ordered Mexican takeout, watched some old Twilight Zone reruns, and went to bed around 11 p.m. The wind hit the windows with some force, and the creaking of our old house seemed to make Ava a little anxious. I joked that the walls were just telling the wind stories from our childhood. She gave a nervous little laugh and drifted off to sleep. I headed to my room too, my eyes already heavy, and the rest of the night passed without a single scare. Saturday felt totally normal. Ava was on the phone with one of her friends, talking about some history assignment, and I used the time to polish up my digital design portfolio, which I was getting ready to submit to a college in Phoenix. The day flew by, and by the time evening hit, Ava decided to try making curry with rice. Around 9:40 p.m., I heard the clatter of pots, water running, and the scent of strong spices filling the air. But what happened next felt like something out of a movie. A sharp scream tore through the hallway and sent me bolting from my chair straight into the kitchen. I found Ava pressed against the cabinet, panicking, pointing at the window above the sink. He was right there, staring at me, covered in blood. I rushed to the window, but the yard was empty. The porch light lit up the overgrown grass, and nothing seemed out of place. I tried to calm her down, saying maybe it was a reflection or just her imagination, but the look on her face said otherwise. She wasn't making it up. We quickly closed the kitchen curtains, finished dinner in silence, and double-checked every door and window lock before heading upstairs. I stayed in her room until she fell asleep. It was past midnight by the time I finally went back to mine. I woke up suddenly at 3:17 a.m. to violent knocking at the front door. It sounded like someone slapping the wood hard, desperate, like they were trying to break it down. I froze in bed, my chest pounding in sync with each hit. It lasted about 3 minutes, but felt like 30. When it finally stopped, the silence was so deep, I could hear the faint hum of the fridge downstairs. I didn't sleep again. I stayed completely still, straining to hear anything unusual. But the rest of the night remained quiet until the sun came up. Once it was daylight, I forced myself to act normal. I grabbed the kitchen trash and headed out to the back of the house. That S when I saw something, or someone, lying near the old garden fence my grandma used to take care of. I moved in slowly and realized it was a body, a man, face down, covered in blood. My steps faltered and my throat tightened. He wasn't moving, wasn't breathing. His face was turned away and I didn't recognize him at all. With shaking hands, I called the police. About 15 minutes later, 3 patrol cars pulled up. One officer named Rogers started asking us a ton of questions. If we'd heard any gunshots, if we knew the man, if we had any visitors. We told them everything. The man at the window, the pounding on the door, the feeling of being watched. But they were just as confused as we were. No missing persons matched his description. None of the neighbors saw or heard anything strange, and none of the street cameras caught any suspicious movement. When our parents came back Sunday afternoon, they were even more freaked out than we were. They kept asking what had happened, but we had no more answers to give. The police offered no explanation. No one ever found out who the man was, or why he ended up in our backyard. To this day, I don't know if Ava truly saw someone at the window or if it was something else, but I know there was a body. I know there was blood. And I know something terrifying happened that night. Every time I look at the kitchen sink, my mind replays what she saw. And what haunts me most is the thought that maybe he wasn't looking at her. Maybe he was looking at all of us. The plan was simple. A quiet weekend with my 2 sons at our old family farmhouse, tucked away in the remote forests of Vermont. My husband, a U.S. Air Force sergeant stationed in Maryland, couldn't get leave approved in time. He insisted I go anyway with the boys. Caleb was 9 and Ryder had just turned 6. I was already used to long drives. I used to work delivery routes for years, so a 4-hour trip with the kids and our golden retriever actually sounded kind of therapeutic. The morning started out great. Clear skies, music on the radio, snacks scattered between the seats. But about an hour in, everything changed. I first noticed the car near Brattleboro. It was an old moss green sedan with rust patches on the hood. It started tailing me, closely, for several miles. I tried to brush it off. Maybe it was just coincidence. But every time I sped up, it sped up. When I slowed down, it slowed down. I even changed lanes a few times, took a side road, yet it stayed there, like a shadow that refused to disappear. My kids were laughing in the back, watching the dog try to grab a fallen French fry, while I kept checking the rearview mirror. Something was off. The kind of thing that makes you rethink all those stories you used to call overdramatic. I tried to shake it by turning onto a little used dirt road, one of those that only locals know about. After about 10 minutes, I finally breathed a little easier. The car was gone. I pulled into an old convenience store, bought some hot chocolate, and let the boys run to the bathroom. The man at the counter mentioned a storm was on its way and wished me luck. I got back on the road with a bit more confidence, but it only took 20 minutes for the nightmare to return. The silhouette of the sedan reappeared, and it was even closer this time. The right headlight flickered like it was signaling me. The car didn't try to pass or fall back. It just stayed there. I didn't know what to do. Speed up, pull over. Stopping could be worse. Caleb must have noticed the tension on my face and asked if something was wrong. I lied. I told him I was just worried about the incoming rain. But inside, my heart was racing faster with every turn. Then I made a desperate decision. I veered off onto a steep rural road that led to an old wooden bridge, the kind of place no one goes without a reason. This time the sedan didn't follow. It vanished. Again. I pulled over and tried to catch my breath. The woods around me felt like they were holding their breath too. Ryder was asleep, clutching a toy in his lap, and Caleb stared out the window, lost in his own world. I stepped outside for a few minutes, stretching my legs and scanning the trees. Nothing. Not a single soul. Just tall trees and dry branches creaking in the wind. We got back on the road. It was nearly dark when I saw the old wooden sign that marked the entrance to my family's land. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. We were almost there. But it still wasn't over. On the last curve before the dirt road, a car parked on the shoulder made me slam the brakes. It was the sedan. No headlights. Just sitting there in silence, like it had been waiting. Someone was inside, but I couldn't make out their face. I swallowed hard and kept driving. As we passed, I felt the weight of eyes on me. There was no chase, no movement, just that heavy silence that clings to your skin. Once we got to the house, I locked every door. I walked the property with a flashlight, checked every window. Then I laid down with the boys until they fell asleep. But I didn't sleep. I stayed on the couch, a baseball bat in my hands, my eyes fixed on the window. The night passed in fragments. Every small creak made me hold my breath. When morning finally came, nothing. No sign of the car, no sounds, no tire marks. It was like it had never been there at all. But I know what I saw. I know it was real. And even though I never found out who was behind the wheel, the worst part was knowing he already knew who I was. It had been 4 years since my daughter, Emily, passed away. She was only 7 when she lost her battle with a rare illness, and ever since, visiting Whispering Pines Cemetery in Albany, New York, became my way of coping with the loss. It was the only place where I felt like I could talk to her without being judged. Sometimes I brought flowers, other times, just silence. My therapist always said it was part of the grieving process. But that October night, when I decided to visit her grave after 10 p.m., grief took on a much darker tone. The street was completely empty when I parked my black Jeep near the cemetery's side gate. It was a maintenance access, and for some reason, it was slightly open. The autumn air was bitter cold, and the wind whispered through the branches of the old trees. I brought a small flashlight, but the weak yellow light barely cut through the darkness between the tombstones. Still, I knew the way by heart. Emily's burial plot was near an internal path, surrounded by 3 twisted oak trees that seemed to cradle her resting place. I walked carefully, as if any heavy step might wake the earth. When I arrived, I knelt on the damp grass and took her photo from my wallet. I sat there for a few minutes, saying the things I never got to tell her while she was alive. The pain was constant, but that night, there was something different in the air. A kind of pressure, like the cemetery itself had stopped breathing. That's when I heard the footsteps. Not fast, not slow, just deliberate, precise. I turned and saw 3 white figures walking between the graves. They looked like they were part of some kind of ceremony. Long robes, no lanterns, no flashlights. Their faces were impossible to see, covered by sheer veils that shifted in the wind. At first, I thought they might be monks or volunteers performing some religious ritual, but they carried no books, no candles, no symbols. They just walked, in absolute silence, as if they were searching for something or someone. With every step they took, my chest tightened. I crouched behind a nearby headstone, trying to stay hidden. They moved in perfect synchronization, all 3 turning their heads in the same direction at the same time, like they were wired together. Then one of them stopped, stood perfectly still, staring directly at where I was hiding. I shrank down, trying to disappear into the shadows. Then the other 2 stopped as well. The tension snapped when I made a mistake and kicked a few stones near the grave. The noise echoed like thunder between the tombs. All 3 of them turned at once and started walking toward me. They didn't run, they didn't speak, they just advanced. Their white robes dragging across the ground, arms hanging loose, like they had no bones. I bolted, stumbling between tombstones and rusted iron crosses. My flashlight slipped from my hand, but I didn't dare go back for it. The side gate appeared like a miracle. I pushed through it, slamming it shut behind me. Only then did I realize my breathing was completely out of control. That's when the second shock hit. Across the street, under a low tree, was a white van, parked in silence. No headlights. I could see someone sitting in the driver's seat, a shadow, watching me. As I approached, the van started up. No horn, no sound except the low hum of the engine. It disappeared around the corner. I made it home somehow. I didn't sleep that night, not the next either. I went back to the cemetery a week later, during the day, and asked a groundskeeper if there had been any special event that night. He said the gates were always locked after sunset, and no one should have been inside. I showed him an old photo of nighttime religious ceremonies, but he shook his head and said nothing like that happens there. At night, this place belongs only to the dead, my friend, and to those who insist on visiting them when they really shouldn't. Back in the summer of 2013, my cousins and I used to spend most weekends at a makeshift campsite deep in the Kentucky woods near Elkhorn Creek. My uncles had an old trailer permanently parked there, and even though the place was a bit run down, to us it was paradise. No adults watching over us, just freedom. That summer, I was 11, the youngest in the group, which meant I was often left out whenever the older kids planned anything exciting. But on one hot July afternoon, they invited me to join them on an adventure to the creek. I had no idea that simple walk would turn into one of the most unexplainable moments of my life. To reach the creek, we had to go down a small ravine just past the last row of trailers. The ground there was loose, and the descent required careful steps. Roots acted as makeshift stairs, and the wet, slick dirt made every movement a balancing act. It had rained heavily 2 days before, so we knew the mud would be a problem, but none of us really cared. We just wanted to swim, throw rocks, and laugh. The kind of fun only kids know how to have with that much energy. After slipping and falling more times than we could count, we made it to the lower section where the creek twisted through trees and moss-covered rocks. 2 of the dogs from the camp had followed us, darting through the brush, sniffing everything. We were relaxing when one of the girls spotted a giant fallen tree near the edge of the water. It looked like it had recently come down. The creepy part, though, was that the only thing stopping it from crashing all the way down was a single thick root, sticking out of the ground like an arm trying to hold up the weight of the world. We got closer to check it out. Some of us laughed, others went quiet. There was something off about it, like time wasn't moving the same way around that tree. And then the dogs started barking. First one, then the other. Not playful barks, panic. They spun in circles, barking at the trunk, at the trees, at what seemed like nothing. One of the boys tried to hold them, but they broke free and took off into the woods. Before we could process what was happening, we heard a crack. The root, that damn root, was giving way. The trunk began to slide downhill, straight toward us. I froze. Seriously, my body just wouldn't move. The others screamed my name and ran, but their voices felt distant. The tree moved faster now, groaning like something alive. And then it happened. From under the trunk, out of the earth, a massive hand appeared. Yes, a hand. Its fingers were too long to be human, the skin blended with the moss and dirt, like it was part of the forest. That hand grabbed a nearby sapling, and with unreal strength, stopped the tree from falling completely. That was the moment I finally managed to move. We all ran back to the ravine, climbing like something from hell was chasing us. No one said a word until we reached the trailer. We were covered in mud, shaking. Some swore they didn't see anything, just ran out of instinct. Others said they saw exactly what I did, the hand. And me, I stayed silent. Because deep down, I knew we weren't alone at that creek. For years I thought about what happened. Part of me tried to reason it out. A branch, a broken trunk, some weird illusion, but it was too vivid. That hand saved our lives. And it wasn't human. It couldn't have been. It was something from another world. Did you like this story? Let me know. Do you think it was an alien, a forest creature, or something we don't even have a name for yet? I'm really curious what you believe. And if you've seen something like this, share it with us. This channel lives off stories like yours. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. Every story here is a journey you'll feel in your bones. Don't miss the chance to be part of this eerie little community that keeps growing by the day. It had been months since I last took a break. Between long shifts working IT support and the constant pressure of night classes, all I wanted was to get away for a few days. So I jumped on a last-minute deal and boarded a cruise ship leaving Fort Lauderdale, Florida, heading to the Caribbean islands. It was my first time on a cruise like this. I imagined days of poolside relaxation, endless food, and peaceful nights listening to the waves against the hull. But what I experienced still keeps me up at night. The first day went exactly as expected. Bright sun, colorful drinks, and tons of excited people. I made friends with a few folks around my age and had dinner at a panoramic restaurant overlooking the ocean. But that same night, on my way back to the cabin, I saw a man standing at the end of the hallway. He looked out of place. He wore a wrinkled dress shirt, brown pants, and dark shoes. His shaved head reflected the dim ceiling light, and his eyes, well, he didn't blink. He just stared at me. When I got closer, he turned around and disappeared into the emergency stairwell. It made me uneasy, but I tried to shake it off. After all, it was a crowded ship, all kinds of people on board. The second day he showed up again, at the breakfast buffet, in the theater that afternoon, by the pool at sunset, always alone, always distant. He never ate, never spoke, just stared. I wondered if he was a crew member, maybe part of the security team, but his presence didn't seem to serve any purpose. It was like a glitch in the system. And the weirdest part, no one else ever seemed to notice him. It was like I was the only one who could see him. That night, after another brief encounter near the elevators, I decided to go to the front desk. I asked if there was any guest matching his description or a crew member dressed like that. The woman behind the desk smiled politely and said no one on board matched what I described. I tried to let it go, but my sleep was restless. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of my cabin doorknob turning, softly, slowly, like someone was trying to open it quietly. I jumped out of bed, held my breath, and rushed to the door. No one. The hallway was completely empty, except for a faint shadow slipping around the far corner. On the third day, I joined an excursion to a private island. The turquoise water, palm trees, and live music felt like a postcard, but I couldn't relax. I had a sinking feeling in my stomach, like something was wrong. The man wasn't on the island, but his absence felt worse than his presence. When I returned to the ship, I was even more on edge. Late that afternoon, I saw him again, standing near the casino, almost like he had been waiting for me. I turned away and ducked into the theater, blending in with the crowd. That was the last time I saw him that day. On the final night of the cruise, I went out to the deck around midnight, hoping the fresh air would help clear my mind. The breeze was cool, and the moon lit up the ocean like liquid silver. I stood there, breathing deep, trying to calm my nerves. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, steady. I didn't need to turn around to know it was him. His presence seemed to pull the air out of the space around us. Finally, I turned. He was standing just a few feet away, leaning on the railing. He didn't speak. He just looked at me. I stood frozen for a few seconds, then walked away, fast, without looking back. At disembarkation, while waiting for my luggage in the terminal, I saw him one last time. Not walking, not following me, just standing there in the crowd, staring at me. And then, he vanished. No one else seemed to see him. No one ever had. It's been 3 weeks since I got back. I've returned to class, to work, to routine. But every now and then, I get this chill, like someone's watching me from behind. One time on the subway, I swear I saw his silhouette reflected in the window. Did he follow me home? I had been a traffic officer in Columbus, Ohio for nearly 7 years. I'd seen it all: accidents, chases, people losing it over parking tickets. But what happened that afternoon in March left a mark that no academy or protocol manual could ever prepare me for. It was the turning point that made me hang up my badge and trade the squad car radio for ears willing to hear my story. It was around 2 p.m. when I pulled into the drive-thru of a restaurant on the north side of town. I was in uniform, in the official vehicle, waiting on my sandwich when I saw a red car across the street with 2 people inside. One of them, the guy in the passenger seat, caught my attention. It was a man known around the area, Kenneth Doyle, and he had an active warrant for multiple armed robberies. I recognized him immediately. Before I could react, the car sped off. I hit the lights and went after him. Less than 2 minutes later, the driver pulled over. My partner was with me, and we followed protocol. He approached the driver's side, and I went to the passenger side. I identified myself and asked Kenneth to step out of the car. He responded with a nervous smile and said he didn't have any ID. I asked again, firmer this time. He ignored me. I insisted once, twice, 3 times. Then something shifted. He glanced at the driver, a terrified woman, and suddenly shoved her out of her seat. She fell onto the pavement. Then he slid over into the driver's seat and locked the doors. I ran to the front of the car, gun drawn, and ordered him to stop. My partner tried opening the door from the other side, but it was no use. Kenneth didn't flinch. He slammed the gas, and I had to leap onto the hood to avoid being run over. In seconds, I was clinging to the metal, my body pressed against the windshield, gun still in hand, pointed straight at his face. The car started slow, maybe 15 miles an hour, but it quickly hit over 50. I was shouting, ordering him to stop, struggling to hold on. He looked calm, cold even, like he'd done it before. When we turned into a construction zone, I knew I was screwed. Up ahead was a drop-off and a steep slope. We were flying. I remember the car hitting something, maybe a concrete block, and I was launched like a rag doll. I landed flat on my back, lost my gun, lost a shoe, and the sound of the impact was the last thing I heard before everything went black. I came to a few minutes later, my face covered in dust, the sun burning my eyes. The squad car was already pulling up beside me. My partner was pale as a sheet, calling for backup on the radio. The ambulance arrived fast. They rushed me to the hospital, and tests showed I had 2 fractured vertebrae. I was bedridden for weeks. During that time, I learned Kenneth had ditched the car a few blocks away, broken into a garage, and stolen another vehicle. The woman who was with him wasn't hurt and gave her statement the next day. Kenneth was arrested 2 weeks later in Kentucky. When I was finally cleared to return to duty, I tried. But something in me had changed. I couldn't even sit in a patrol car without feeling the weight of that hood pressing on my spine. Everything became a trigger. I requested a transfer, then leave. Eventually, I turned in my badge and my gun. Kenneth was sentenced to 5 years, and believe it or not, he wrote me a letter from prison. He apologized, said he never meant to hurt me. I don't know if I believed him, but I wrote back. I said if he came out a different man, maybe all of this would have meant something. These days, I give talks about emotional control during extreme situations. I share my story with other officers who, like me, have seen hell through the windshield of a squad car. But every time I drive past that same drive-through, my chest tightens, because I know one moment of hesitation almost cost me my life. In September of 2019, I decided to take some time just for myself. After a messy breakup and several suffocating weeks at work, I'm a warehouse manager at a shipping company in Omaha, Nebraska. All I wanted was to disconnect from the world. I planned a weekend of complete isolation in the mountains of Idaho, at a spot a friend had recommended. Hardly anyone knew about it. The area was remote, with no cell signal and a gravel road that disappeared into the trees. Perfect. I took my old SUV, which I'd set up for camping. I had water, lanterns, a tent, a machete, packaged food, everything ready. I drove for over 6 hours, down narrowing trails, until I found a clearing beside a stream. The air was crisp, the trees thick. I set up camp easily and built a fire. The sky was clear, and the stars felt closer than ever. For the first time in months, my mind was actually at peace. I fell asleep in the car, seats folded down, my sleeping bag wrapped around me like a cocoon. Around 3 a.m., I woke to a strange sound. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't the wind. It was rhythmic, a kind of chant, long, repetitive, in a language I didn't recognize. It was coming from somewhere in the trees. The voice wasn't aggressive, but it didn't sound natural either. I froze. Sat there listening for minutes, heart pounding, trying to figure out if it was people, some ritual, or just my mind playing tricks. I don't know how, but I dozed off again, only to wake up with a jolt, a more direct sound, a tap, tap, tap on the side window. I turned slowly, barely breathing, and I saw it. A face, right up against the glass, pale, eyes opened too wide. The skin looked dirty or painted in irregular patterns. There was no expression, just presence. I screamed, instinctively, like an animal. The face jerked back and vanished into the dark. It took me over an hour to build the courage to get out of the car. I started the engine and left the headlights on the entire time. I scanned the area with my flashlight. Nothing. No sounds, no tracks, just silence. I locked everything again and stayed awake the rest of the night, machete beside me, eyes locked on the window, waiting for the face to return. At dawn, I saw footprints, not from boots, not from shoes, bare feet, light, small, like someone had walked barefoot through the wet forest. It was impossible to tell if they were from a child or an adult. The tracks circled the car, then led back toward the trail I'd used to get there. I packed everything in a rush and left. I didn't look back, not once. Even after I got home, it stayed with me. Sometimes I see the face again, when I am alone too long or when the streetlight casts shadows on my bedroom window. I've never told anyone until now, because deep down, I'm afraid someone will say the thing I fear most, that it wasn't too human. Now, it's your turn. Did this story get under your skin? What part creeped you out the most? And more importantly, have you ever experienced something you can't explain? Don't keep it to yourself. Tell us in the comments. Share with the community. Around here, your story is always welcome. No judgment. And if you liked this video, really liked it, and felt connected to it, stay with us. Click that subscribe button and join this family that grows with every story told. We share what gives you chills, but also what brings people together. And if today you learned even just to trust your gut a little more, then it was already worth it. See you in the next video. And remember, some eyes are still watching, even when you think you're alone.